Hello, welcome to the review of A Course of Love. We're on chapter 27 today, and the title of this chapter is Being. He tells us right off the bat in verse 1, you have attached being to being human. In your quest to identify yourself, you've simply narrowed yourself to the visible and describable. In this one error do all errors lie. Wow, what a potent verse. Because really it's pointing out the fact that when we identify so completely with this human self, we think that our being is limited to that. And this is the big mistake that causes everything else to kind of cave in. So in reality, your being is all purpose, honor, and glory. That's who you actually are. And there's no such thing as being alive or dead, being human or divine. Being simply is, and it is never not so. So in other words, you always are. You always have been. But the experience that you're having now of being an individuated human, the error is when we think that's the entirety of our experience. Verse 3 tells us, yet being like love is in relationship. Thus your purpose here, rather than being one of finding meaning, is one of coming to know through relationship. It is in coming to know through relationship that you come to know yourself. So what is this telling us? So we have been trying to find meaning within our individual human experience. I mean, this is true for all of us, trying to do whatever we can to figure out, what does this mean? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? What's this all about? And we are looking at that from within the human individuated experience. What he's telling us here is that you're not going to find it there. Because when you are in relationship, you are able to experience the being that you are that is not dependent on this individuated human experience. That's why you can come to know yourself only in relationship, because it's in relationship that you have the experience of oneness with whatever it is that you're in relationship with. And when that happens and you recognize the oneness that's there, suddenly the experience of being an individuated human is not your limitation any longer. There's certainly the recognition that, yep, my experience now is coming through this individuated form. And that is not the entirety of who I am. It's a fraction of who and what I am. And the only way that we can have that recognition is when we're in relationship. And we realize, oh, I'm connected to all of this. So my experience can't be merely my human experience, my individual experience, because I'm connected to all of this. As has often been stated, the purpose of this work is to establish your identity. The self you are is unique, but it is integral to all. So the self you are includes your individuated human, but it is also a part of the bigger thing that's going on here. Verse 5, you have become confused between the personal self and a true self because you have not as yet identified your true self. Once you have identified your true self, all such confusion will end. So that gives rise to the question, well, how do I come to know my true self? And the answer is there's the only way, the only way to know self is through relationship. You don't come to know self by reading a great deal of books. You don't come to know self by meditating alone. You come to really know self through relationship. So when we think of relationship, we think of a partner. But relationship includes that, but is not limited to that. So here are some examples of the relationships that we're talking about. Relationships between the human expression and the divine. Relationship between all living things, that recognition of that energy that we all share. Relationship with each moment. Here I am. Relationship with your experience, your life, the things that are presented for you. So what we're trying to do here is to actually make a shift in how we respond to whatever comes up in our field of awareness. You will know yourself through your relationship with the Christ in you. What is the Christ in you? It's the thought of God that created you. So what is that thought? That thought is like, ooh, wouldn't it be cool if we could have all these different expressions of the one thing? And now you are experiencing and expressing as one of those expressions. That's the Christ in you. The part of God slash love slash relationship slash union, the part of the one thing that is expressing in form. This relationship with the Christ in you always was and always will be. You are asked to come to know that relationship again. Your heart knows unity and has no desire to be separate and alone. I mean, really, look at that. That's all anybody wants. We all want love. We do anything to get it. We do everything to get it because we don't want to be separate and alone. Only the mind wants separation. And the mind wants separation out of fear because the mind thinks it can be hurt. So the mind wants to separate to protect itself. So recognize that your heart really is the part that's connected and aware of the Christ in you and doesn't want separation. It wants union. Verse 13, living in relationship is living in love and living as who you are. Living in relationship is living in the present. That's just about as plain and simple as it can get. Living in the present moment. Accepting, allowing, trusting whatever presents itself. So what does living in relationship look like? Well, here are some of the attributes of it. It's acceptance of all that's happening. It's the willingness to set aside judgment. It's abandoning what should be happening for what is actually happening. It's living in harmony, even with conflict. Nothing is disallowed. It's complete reliance on relationship rather than mind. Relationship, of course, meaning joining what is, joining what's happening, joining what presents itself, joining the people who are before us. It's dropping preconceived notions, habitual judgments, and concern for future. If I'm concerned about what's going to happen in the next moment, it's impossible for me to be present in this one. And from this place, there will be a certainty of how to respond to events and others. Verse 19 tells us, living in relationship provides a constant knowing of this sort, a simple knowing of a way things are meant to be. So as we practice this, as we actually live in relationship and come from that perspective, a knowing is a byproduct. A knowing happens. We don't have to seek a knowing. The knowing happens as a result of our experience. You will know you're living in relationship when you feel this certainty. Verse 21, you're ready now And all that will prevent you from living a life of love is unwillingness to do so. I mean, there's your assurance. If you think, oh, I need to learn more, I don't have it yet. No. Only your unwillingness to actually practice this is going to keep you from living a life of love. And I assure you, it's a much, much more satisfying way to live. And your willingness depends on trust. And this is just calling it as it is. Trust in these teachings. Do you trust they're true? Trust in God, which is also love, which is, the one thing that's happening. Do you trust that? And trust in yourself. Trust in the fact that there is something there in you that's trustworthy. So when you can trust that, you can let the mind's traps go, the judgment and the trying to control your experience, and you can enter into relationship with your experience as it is. So this is actually where this chapter ends, but because the information in this chapter, there are so many avenues and paths to awakening. This book, this material is such a beautiful path. I endorse it so much. But it did remind me of another teaching that has also been really helpful to me, that really says the same thing about living in relationship, living in love, but gives some concrete instruction for that. So I have taken the liberty of kind of summarizing that approach and adding my own little addendum to this chapter that I'm hoping will be helpful to you. And if it isn't, just, ignore it. But it was helpful to the students in my class, and it's helpful to me. And so I'm offering it to you with the disclaimer: this information is not from A Course of Love material. This is actually gleaned from the work of a spiritual teacher named Adyashanti. And he really lays things out in a great practical way. And I have taken the basis of his teachings and added my own interpretation and given these 5 steps, put them into these 5 steps for living in love. So this is outside of A Course of Love. It was not channeled by Mari Perron, and it's just here to help you on your path if you so choose it. So hope that doesn't offend anyone. So here are 5 steps, and in reality, steps 3, 4, and 5 are actually byproducts of steps 1 and 2, but just for the sequential organization of it, I put them together into 5 steps. So how to live in love. Step 1 is opening. Rather than closing off any part of your experience, open completely to life as it is now, both inside you and outside you. Welcome all experience. Be open to everything, not just the good parts. So that's the first step. The most important one is to just completely open yourself up. Now notice that it says both inside you and outside you. This was kind of a trick for me for a while, because if something would come up inside me that I judged as being not useful or helpful or skillful, then I'd try to change that, fix that. If there was a feeling that didn't feel good, that wasn't positive, the temptation was to use some of the techniques that I had learned to change that feeling, to meditate or to do something that was going to make me feel good, to try to look at it in another way, to, use some of the spiritual techniques that I had learned for transposing feelings. And once I recognized that whatever feeling came up, also, whatever came up inside of me, needed to find an open door, then things started to shift. Not easy, but really a crucial step. So just, I would caution you to pay attention to that. Just really allow whatever is happening without judgment, even on the inside as well as the outside. So step 2 then is stopping. Just stop trying to change anything. Stop trying to fix anything. Accept your relationship with experience, and that's just being open to it. Drop constant evaluation and resistance to anything that presents itself, inside or outside. Just don't resist, don't stop, don't try to analyze, don't try to fix. Just stop trying to change it. Now, that does not include inquiry. I mean, inquiry can be really valuable if there is a feeling that's going on inside of you that's really strong, and you want to get to the bottom of it. Find out what that feeling really is and really feel it in its entirety. The process of inquiry, asking the questions about it. Oh, what is this about? Where did this come from? What is this about? That, is it true, is really helpful at this point. Not to fix it, but to understand it, to embrace it, to really bring it into the light and be conscious of what it is that's going on inside. In this step, when you're using inquiry, the work of Byron Katie, of course, is a really great guideline. So what happens then, once you've opened to your experience and you've stopped trying to change it, now an intimacy comes. This new relationship with your experience creates a true intimacy and connection to what is happening. So now, because you're not resisting anything, there's a connection to what your experience actually is, which then leads to step 4, a new response. Now that you're not hiding from anything, you're not trying to fix or change anything, your responses are going to be different than they used to be, because we used to respond from our mind. Our mind used to tell us, oh, well, that's happened, that you have to protect yourself, do this, do that. So once we've gotten to this point, all bets are off. A new response comes. You can't predict what it's going to be, because when you are open and you accept whatever's happening, that response is going to come from love, and it's going to look different than a response that came from fear. You will now respond differently to whatever happens in your life. Right action and right speech are byproducts of acceptance of what is. So don't be surprised if the way that you react in the world is different from the way that you have in the past, because you're coming from a place of acceptance. And step 5, this is also a byproduct, stillness. From this place, you will come to an awareness of the vastness of being and the oneness of all. So this happens naturally once you're in that place of living in love, accepting what is, embracing your experience, and trusting that what's happening for you is exactly what needs to happen for you in this moment, and not running or hiding from anything that's happening in your life and in your experience, both on the inside and on the outside. What a relief that it's not your job to try to fix or change or control any of it. So I hope that that addendum was helpful to you. I do have it in a printed Word format. If you would like a copy of that, you can email me at papermoonjazz@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to send you a copy of these guidelines. So many thanks to you for listening. Much gratitude for Tamari Perrone, to Adia Shanti, and to Byron Katie for their contributions to this work. Peace and love.